Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of IncResearch.ca, Canada's first online financial news and research service, providing insider news and knowledge to investors. Check out the website, CanadianInsider.com. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Hi, Jim, and it's great to be back, and thanks for everyone tuning in.
Ted, how are the Canadian stock markets comparing to the U.S. Stock markets?
Well, the Canadian market that we track is what we would call the insider market, which is tracked by our Canadian Insider Index, and it hit a new all-time high just yesterday. So it'll be February 2nd, and it's doing pretty well. It's up about 7% year to date, and of course a lot of that is thanks to the energy sector. But we've actually upgraded the Canadian sector to undervalued, because what basically we're seeing the Canadian market is that the insiders are buying the dips. I know they're a mirror image of the last decade, where everyone bought the big tech dips, the S&P, as someone called it, the S&P 5, as opposed to the S&P 500. People would be buying the dips, knowing the Fed was at their back. Well, welcome to this decade, and in the post-COVID era, we're being driven by the energy markets in a lot of ways, because as much as it gets a bad name, Jim, you can't do much without energy. We wouldn't be talking right now if there weren't some energy. I wouldn't have been able to pick up my kids at school without energy. We need it. And as much as there's elements in the political establishment globally that don't believe we need fossil fuels, that can all be solved by wind and solar. Last time I checked, there weren't a lot of cars being propelled by windmills, and that battery storage issue just hasn't been solved yet. So, that we've had a botched energy transition. Look, I'm all in favor of moving to a greener environment and moving to electric vehicles and the like, but the transition to that has been completely botched globally. As I think we talked the last time, in Canada, we're fortunate in that the provinces basically have I would call it, a moat around resource policy, that the federal government can only come in and do so much damage if it tries. That we're okay here, but fundamentally, the global political elites have completely botched the energy transition, and that's going to give the oil patch in Canada, a couple of years with the wind at its back until either the whole world throws in the towel on climate change, at which point they just say, okay, well, we can drill, baby, drill. And, you get a Republican back in the White House, and they start doing shale again, and shale goes to new records, and then the oil supply goes up, and prices go down. There's that scenario. Or they actually get serious about nuclear, bring in nuclear, because, despite what propaganda you'll hear from the same environmental groups that try and stop every nuclear power plant from happening, they will say, oh, well, it takes too long to build nuclear. Well, yeah, especially if you're protesting it every step of the way. But if there was a determination to build nuclear plants in 5 to 7 years, it would make a big difference. And I think eventually policymakers will have to come to that choice, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And so we're going to have this may or may not be, but, could very well be the last hurrah for the oil patch in terms of, fossil fuels. But boy, Jim, it's shaping up to be one heck of a party, and I just think the party is in the early stages. And, yes, we may have we have a global recession that will put a dent in it, but, that would just be halftime. So, the Canadian market's looking good. We don't think it's overvalued. Yes, there will be pullbacks. Yes, oil will pull back. Yes, there will be headlines, and yes, there's probably a war premium in there right now, which could come off. But, we've been talking about this for quite some time now, since, the kind of the pandemic got rolling and we had that negative print on the oil price. It became pretty clear to us soon after, a few months after, that something had changed. So we've been, certainly all over this oil patch revival since last fall, 2020. And, we don't see it coming to an end, but there will be pullbacks. If you haven't participated, just be nimble. You don't want to be chasing at the top ends of the technical ranges and buying at the highs. There will be headlines, there will be pullbacks, but there's still a policy mess globally. And so long as we don't have global recession, the oil patch, it's going to defy the pundits. It's still one of the most hated areas globally with fund managers. People don't want it to succeed. So those are all the types of things that I like about an investment opportunity, right? When you've got still a lot of people who hate the idea of having to buy it and don't like it, that's great. When you have everyone talking about how they own energy stocks and how, my energy stock went up, 50% the last month, when everybody, when every cab driver or, is talking about that, then, maybe we're near the top, but we're not there yet.
Now, the UK is facing an energy crisis. They were trying to use alternative energy, and boom, the wind farms got becalmed, and they have to import natural gas. And now something like 22 million households in the UK are facing a $4,000 a year bill for their gas and electricity.
Well, it's absolutely amazing because now these governments are going to have to subsidize energy use, which is, hey, well, that's kind of what they did back in the old days, for political opportunism, and that kind of drove up the demand for energy. So, again, we have such a policy mess globally on the energy front that, and they don't want to bite the bullet. And you see this in Europe as well. So it's, where, the continental Europe, where, you've got an argument between France and Germany over whether nuclear is green or not. Now, give me a break. That's all politics. It's just, politics of failure. And it's, it's very, telling in the pocketbooks of the voters. That's where they're feeling it. And no, it is not because of the big oil companies. It is not because of the Middle East. It is because of stupid political decisions. And, that is the bottom line. So hopefully voters in those areas, voters can do what they want to do. And, but that's basically what it comes down to. And that's why we've got a mess. And that's why it's good for Canadian energy. We are, look, let's take it, Jim, when we can get it. And, Canada, has kind of suffered over the past few years in terms of low energy prices. Now they're back, but let's not kid ourselves. This is probably a medium-term phenomenon. It's not necessarily a long-term phenomenon. We should never bet on that. The sort of the cyclical part of the energy equation has not gone away. As I said, there could be a recession that would pull things back. Energy stocks could fall significantly, but in terms of a medium-term trend, until there's this policy reckoning with global climate change goals and economic activity, fossil fuels will continue to be purchased. And because supply has been hamstrung by the environmental lobby, those who pay the highest price will get the goods, and those who, want to try and stick with windmills and other forms of energy, that's fine. That'll be their choice, but we'll see where it leads them. So it's we're great times ahead, I think, for the oil patch, just getting started, but there will be volatility, and you could go for some bouts of pullback for sure. Like the cyclicality in the energy sector has not gone away. It's just, I think, the secular, I don't want to say secular, but certainly the medium-term trend has changed favorably. So let's just stick with that. We wrote about our morning report, our first morning report of the year was an energy stock. It wasn't a penny stock. It was a $1 billion company, and it's up over 20% already year to date. So we've been talking about this for a while, and it really surprised us to this upgrade of the energy sector and the Canadian market. If anything, I thought we would be downgrading it because it's gone up so much, but it's been upgraded. So it's really surprised us. So we will be doing a rebalancing of the Canadian Insider Index later this month. So keep an eye on that on our announcements. Right now, the energy sector is like over 40% because a lot of these stocks have done so well. The top performing stock has doubled in just a few months. So a lot of those will get paired back to their equal weight, and we'll see which stocks come in and come out, and where we end up with with energy allocation. But that we'll be doing that'll be the sort of a key signpost in terms of where we are with allocation of the energy sector in terms of how our models are looking at it.
Now, one of the arguments against natural gas is methane leakage between producer and user. But satellite imagery shows it's all happening in Russia. Canada is super responsible when it comes to handling natural gas.
Well, this again comes down to political leadership, and it's Jim. I've had some experience in Canadian politics, and I've in terms of on the policy side, I've never run for office or anything like that, but I have done some policy work, and I've been trying to. In the past, I've given up, but I've been trying to pound the table, particularly onto the blue team. That look, don't back away from the importance of the energy sector in dealing with climate change. And now people have different views on climate change. But if you want to win an election, okay, in Canada, you have to have a credible climate change policy. Like that, people may not agree with me on that, but you just look at the results of the past few elections, okay? So if you can have a credible approach to climate change and also include the oil patch, because like you said, there are some companies that are doing fantastic global leading work on zero emissions. One of the stocks that we've written about this month, and we've written about it over and over again, and I've put it in the Globe and Mail. Net zero, Jim. Net zero. Net negative carbon emissions, right? Like, come on, people. Like we are the leaders. We can show the way, and instead we get bogged down in carbon tax and this and that, and, come on. Let's, put our best foot forward. We have a responsible oil patch. They're doing great work. Yes, some companies are lagging. We've written about that. Some companies are leading. Let's champion them. Let's point to them as being gold medalists in the environmental field. And yes, you can be an environmentalist and a Canadian oil patch producer. They are not mutually exclusive. And anyone who disagrees with me on that, I'd love to have a debate, because look where we are. Every country's missing their carbon targets. We're nowhere close to meeting the Paris objectives, and oil prices are going through the roof. So, there's been policy failure after policy failure, and that's just on the environmental side. And Jim, we haven't even talked about the Fed. So there we go. But it really is disheartening in a sense that we're not championing our successes in the Canadian oil patch more than we are.
If you wanted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, wouldn't it help more if we got Canadian LNG to Asia and Europe, where they're still using a lot of coal?
Well, the U.S. has figured that one out, and they've been banging. The U.S. has been in a bit more fortunate position because they had LNG import terminals where they were able to retrofit to export terminals. Well, we didn't have any of that, so we have to build them. And, we're still waiting on the one in BC, and there was going to be one in Nova Scotia. I haven't checked on the status of it, but it kind of got shelved right before natural gas went through the roof. So, it's, we're not going to be trailblazers on that front. If we're lucky, we'll get one export terminal. But look, the fact is, if the U.S. is exporting natural gas, that's fine. It'll help the North American market dynamics. And, fortunately, Joe Biden hasn't stopped natural gas exports from Canada. Maybe that'll be his second-term promise. Maybe he'll do that the first day in office if he wins another term. But I think the chances of both of those are getting slimmer and slimmer. So it'll be. I think Canadian natural gas producers are looking good. But again, we're still going to have the cyclicality. You got to be able to ride out the volatility in that sector. That's not going away.
Well, people in the UK are facing energy bills this year that are 54% higher. If a Canadian politician allowed that, how long do you think they'd last?
All right. Well, exactly. So, it's, and I think Canadian politicians understand that. And I think any politician in the world understands that. They just made stupid decisions in Europe. And, it's incompetence. So, well-intentioned incompetence, and now they're paying the bill for it. And anyway, I'm not going to comment on European or British politics. I don't have any special insight there, but it sounds like there needs to be a good round of accountability to those policymakers. And let's hope in Canada, we choose wisely on the energy front going forward. Let's not get too down on ourselves. I know there's always negative feelings about pipelines and the like, but look, those challenges happen in every democracy, as you said, but not in places like Russia, right? So, we have these environmentalists who want Canada to stop producing hydrocarbons. Like, how stupid is that? No, please go to Europe and where where your ideas may be better received, no, why would we give up our market share to Saudi Arabia and Russia? It's absolutely nuts. But yet these people get prime time coverage on this public broadcaster, who whether I like it or not, I have to support, with my tax dollars, and yet we keep hearing these people, saying that Canada shouldn't be producing hydrocarbons. It's absolutely bonkers. Anyway, fortunately, those voices have been marginalized in terms of where their influence has been on the public policy front. So that is positive. And again, that's why I'm kind of, as much as I have some concerns about the economic direction of the country, the energy part of the equation is certainly a bright spot.
We'll have more with Ted Dixon right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ted Dixon. Ted, really interesting Canadian politics. Hundreds of truckers descended on Ottawa calling for Justin Trudeau to resign. Instead, Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole got the boot from his own party. What's going on there?
Well, Jim, if Canadian energy stocks are hot, Canadian politics is boiling. And, it would be kind of entertaining if, until you, pardon the pun, take a look under the hood of what's going on. And I think there are deeper ramifications than might first meet the eye with this trucker protest. Now, I have to admit, when it first got going, I didn't pay that much attention to it. Okay, well, everyone, these guys are going to get up there, and families. There's not just guys; the whole families are going up there. They're going to make a point, and fine, but then it started to get some political momentum. And yes, there were fringe groups that came along, but that's going to happen in any protests. Let's just assume that, no matter left or right or whatever the cause is. Mostly, not always, but often. Okay, so, but they got some political momentum, and within a few days, Aaron O'Toole was gone, and a lot because there were a lot of issues around his leadership in the party, but I think the truckers kind of was the straw that broke the camel's back, and just in the way he handled it. So that kind of finished him off. But they had come for Justin Trudeau, not Aaron O'Toole, right? Like, Jim, this truckers convoy, it is not the love parade, right? This truckers convoy means business. And they're going to be back, from what I understand, on the weekend. So they got Aaron O'Toole this week. Now, if Justin Trudeau, he came out with a Hillary Clinton-esque approach to them, basically, taking the deplorables approach, okay? And we'll see how far that gets him. And, I think he set the stage for a very, very interesting weekend coming up. And we shall see. And, he's already being asked about whether he brings the military in or not. He's going to try and sidestep that. He's been fortunate in the last week. He's been able to be absent, and Aaron O'Toole has took all the pain. We will see how far his luck continues, whether he's able to continue to dodge this issue and by simply kind of, declaring this movement as a marginal movement. The fact of the matter is, I think there's more at stake than just vaccine mandates here. You don't get this kind of energy, determination, people investing into a cause with their own time and money without a lot of motivating factors. Yes, I'm sure there are a lot of true anti-vaccine mandate believers that are involved with this convoy. I'm sure that most of them are. But to get them to go to Ottawa, to get them to, to go out in the freezing cold, to do what they've done, there's got to be a lot of motivation behind that. And I guess I'm sure some of them, it is just the vaccine mandate. That they're passionate about that. But, to fuel people's anger, anxiety, to push them to that limit, there's a lot more going on than I think just vaccine mandates. And that's my opinion. A lot of politicians, particularly in the Liberal Party, I'm sure do not agree with that. Well, that's fine. I could be wrong. I'm not, maybe it's just vaccine mandate people, right? Like that, maybe it's a single issue that's got all these people in Ottawa. It's just the vaccine mandates. That's one way of looking at it. But I think there's more under the hood, as I said. And, when you look at it, Jim, we have now not had a decade of economic stagnation in Canada. We have been going backwards. I said, Ted, what are you talking about? No, economy's growing. What's this guy talking about? Real estate prices are up. Okay. Per capita GDP in Canada peaked a decade ago. It peaked in 2012 at $52,669 US, okay? And what was it? What was it in 2020? $43,421, okay? Now, if anybody on the left or the right, who dismisses that as being any kind of a meaningful development in the Canadian economy, I think is dreaming. We have had a decade of policy failure in Canada to generate new wealth, okay? And its chickens are coming home to roost amongst the population. Many are getting so frustrated. And this is my take on part of the motivation for this protest. And again, it's just opinion. There's no facts to back it up, except from putting facts together, a mosaic of facts. I think in some cases, people have been really struggling, and these vaccine mandates and restrictions, they see that as kind of the last straw that's holding them back. There's a lot of economic forces that have been working against families over the past decade, and I think COVID and the restrictions with them, I think this is just pushing many people to the brink and say, okay, that's enough. You've tied my hands enough. Like, I'm not getting ahead, and now you're forcing me to do all these things, and that's it, right? I've had enough. I want a level playing field. I want some freedom. I want to be able to live my life, okay? So, and the problem too, Jim, and I'm sorry I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but this peaking of GDP growth is not a Justin Trudeau phenomenon, okay? I mean, it peaked, okay, 2 years before Stephen Harper left office, okay? So this is not a blue versus red team thing, okay? This is an old policies versus we need new policies thing, okay? So we don't need just to get rid of Justin Trudeau if you think that's the answer. No. What you need is, whether it's the blue team or the red team, to bring in some new policies that will start putting that GDP per capita growth back up, right? And so, I'm sorry, it's not going to be done by just increasing the immigration level. I'm all in favor of immigration, but it's not a one-trick pony for growth, right? We've had good, healthy immigration levels in Canada, but look what's happening to GDP growth. Is it fair to bring new immigrants into this country when our GDP growth is falling? And yes, we may get a bump from rising energy prices in, this year. But again, this is the most hated sector amongst certain parts of the political elite in this country. So you're relying on the most hated sector to, these people to generate growth. I mean, the irony is just out of this world. So, this truckers convoy, I initially kind of didn't give it much thought, but this could actually end up being one of those political turning points in this country. We will have to see. Maybe not. Maybe it'll all peter out this weekend, and it'll just be maybe a story of the year for 2022. And by the time we get to November, no one will remember it, but we'll see.
Inflation and interest rates, two things we should keep a real close eye on?
Well, absolutely. Because, here we've had these vaccine and mandates and COVID mandates that some people feel is hampering them. What happens if we start raising interest rates, which we apparently are going to be doing? You talk about a headwind. Well, that hasn't even started yet. So when you've got kind of political risk and you've got rising interest rates, political risk meaning, there's a minority government, you've got these protests that people haven't kind of seen before in this country for a long time, you marry that with rising interest rates, we will have to see where that goes. And, a couple of things that I'd be looking at here is, Canada's had a relatively strong workforce participation rate. It's 65% compared to 62% in the U.S. Let's see how that holds up. And, from an investing perspective, let's watch what some of these, sort of subprime consumer stocks are doing, housing finance areas. Some of the sort of more subprime, broader companies have been struggling, while the energy stocks have been doing very well. We've seen some initial year-to-date weakness in some of the subprime areas. High end is doing fine. Broad Canadian banks are doing fine. But, there are some initial kind of cracks that may be starting to appear. And, so we'll be keeping an eye on that in our reports going forward. Again, it's a little early. We're only into February now. But let's just see how this combination of political unsettledness and rising interest rates works on the Canadian consumer, especially on where a lot of the consumption takes place, which is sort of in sort of the not in the high end income area, but in the middle and lower income areas. So we could be in for a very not just an interesting year, but it could be a year that defines the economic and political landscape in this country for years to come.
Ted, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Jim, thanks for having me back. And before we go, I just want to let people know that if you are interested in a Canadian Insider Ultra Club membership, you should check us out now, because we still offer our Litecoin membership for 1 year, and Litecoin has fallen with the rest of the market. So the market has put a membership sale on, Jim, for 1 year at Canadian Insider. So if you're interested, check it out while you can.
And how would someone find out about that Ultra membership?
Well, you just go to CanadianInsider.com, and if you don't have Litecoin, there's a button to click on. If you're a Canadian resident, you can sign up an account at Coinberry, and we have a marketing relationship with them. We get an affiliate fee, but look, they're registered with the OSC. They're a cryptocurrency exchange that's registered with the OSC. Cryptocurrencies are very risky, but in terms of getting a Litecoin, if you don't have an account, that's an option for you. And it's just one Litecoin plus tax. And you can find out about that going to CanadianInsider.com, and you can go to the Litecoin page, or you can just go to the Join Us page, and you'll see more information. So, yeah, it's a great sale right now. Litecoin, as we're speaking, is trading about $109 US, I think, and so it was trading much higher than that earlier in the year. So there you go.
Thanks again, Ted.
Thanks for having me back, Jim.
Guest has been Ted Dixon, CEO and co-founder of inkresearch.ca, his website, CanadianInsider.com. If you have any questions for Ted or any of our other guests, we'll ask that question for you if you send it to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. You can find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.